Hello. It's been a while. Shut up. Listen, lots been going on. I have a new job. I've been working as a designer on an MMO. I'll share like a link and stuff in the comments if you're interested. The description will be there and like the description and all that. Point is, I've been very busy. A lot's been going on. I still exist. I actually still want to keep doing this. So let's. The main thing I want to talk about today is how you add a really simple system to D&D 5th edition. I think this is something that I've sort of overlooked. Like I've done much more complex things, like there's, class design, subclass design as a sort of subset of that. How, like really abstract things, like how D&D can aid in like education. There's all kinds of like some crazy stuff. Today I want to do something very, very simple and just talk about how you can sort of amend systems or add simple systems in D&D for like really good effect without much effort. So as an example of this, I actually have a system that I put together that this is a great example because it's something that I really just threw together. It took, like 5 minutes to design this, right? Like really, really quick, really simple. There's probably a bunch of problems with it, but like it would work. And the reason that this is so important is mainly so that you can cut down on prep time so that you're not spending all your time designing like one system that you just throw away later, but also that makes it so that you can build these systems really quickly and just do like a completely unique system for a specific combat. And it's a great way to help a combat feel pretty unique. But also beyond that, even really quick systems are really good in 5th edition. Like they fit really nicely because 5th edition is all about these like really referenceable, really easily referenceable rules that mostly work in isolation, but can also work with all these other systems. So in this example that I'm going to give you, it's really just like basically it's essentially a military organization that has religious foundations. So they're like paladins and they do all this stuff. But the idea here is basically that these people are highly trained military and they're going to offer bonuses to the field that makes them greater than the sum of their parts, and we want that to be represented mechanically. Now, a much more sophisticated way of doing this would be to make it so that the sort of player decisions are built around very, very precise tactics that the military people are doing, and you can absolutely do all that. But what I want to do is sort of relieve some of the pressure that would be on you as a DM to figure out how to make that work by saying, you know what, we can actually just very simply and in some ways superficially turn those concepts into mechanics that we can just slap on. That isn't like necessarily the most elegant way to design these systems, but it's a really fast way to design the systems that does have a pretty good impact. Like it's not as good, but it's pretty good and it's fast. So it's a really much more efficient way to do that. So in this example, we've got this idea of like a shield wall, right? It's very simple. Once they are in this formation, which the sort of commander just does, like as an action, he can sort of say, we'll do the shield wall formation, and then they do. And what that happens is it just gives everybody extra AC, 1 or 2 or whatever. Probably 1 is a little low, but maybe 2 AC, and then anybody who's close to them gets that benefit. And that helps make them feel a little bit safer, right? And also what that does is it creates a sort of almost safe zone around where the small group of military people might be. And if they decide they want to move off and do something else, there's a trade-off there. So it's the kind of thing where you have a mechanic. The mechanic itself is very simple, but the important thing here is, yes, but the players can like go do other things. This would go in conjunction with adding some kind of incentive to leave and wander off and explore or scout ahead, stuff like that. And that way you create these interesting trade-offs for the players deciding like how much do they want to stick with the military versus how much do they want to go off on their own. And that's really interesting too, because that also creates roleplay opportunities where the military people are like, you should stick with us. It's very important that we're on the same page and that you're following orders. And that's the kind of way, like, if this is the way your military organization would, mine is, then that makes perfect sense thematically, right? But it also creates these great opportunities for roleplay because now the players are going to have to engage in some conflict with them in terms of, well, they want this, but you want this. That's conflict, right? You have two parties, their wants diverge, and that's how you create conflict for a narrative. Now, you can easily do that in game design, and these are really simple ways to do that, these little mechanics. So those are probably the main things you want to consider. What is the mechanic? And it can be really, really simple, but when you're doing that, make sure you're also considering what thing does that mechanic need to be in conflict with in order to create an interesting decision. And then you define that decision. Once you've identified what that decision looks like, you can ask yourself, okay, is this the kind of decision I want players to be making? And then you just look at what the sort of, you try to figure out how it would feel to be making that decision. And this is where you would need to apply some empathy and figure out, this is what it would feel like to make that decision. And you can create tension that way. Not all tension is made equal, so you have to be a little bit careful, but it's really simple. So a second example of this, we have, what is it? Aggressive assault. Anyone within 5 feet of at least 2 affected of the military people gain pack tactics. So it's similar, but it's more offensive. And it's the same kind of thing, but it's different because it's not just, oh, you're next to them and you get a buff. It's you're next to them and you get a buff to AC, which is passive, so you want to stay there to keep the buff. Or you want to stay there when you attack. Now that's useful because when you have the players go to go, they can head in and attack. That sort of tethers them, but they want to stay within movement range of the Dragon Watchers, right? So they're going to stay a little bit close-ish, but not too far. And this is useful because you might think, yeah, but isn't that kind of the same just with the closer proximity? And it's similar, but the thing is, because it's a distance and not a proximity, now we're doing things like encouraging people to use their mobility skills a bit more, right? If you have a monk in your party with a bunch more movement speed, that kind of thing is really, or rogues with bonus action dash, things like that. Action surge is another one, or even if you just have like a wizard, something like long strider might actually be useful in this situation. So we have a lot of situations we can create very divergent things with I talk too much with my hands. Very divergent concepts, and you create these very interesting decisions. So that's just a really quick video. I didn't want to go too in depth to this because I think that pretty much makes the point. Because just first of all, I'm kind of getting back into the swing of things, so we're going to do something light. But second of all, I really do want to show that you can also just do this in a very simple way, but simple can also be good or not good, right? The crux of it all is coming down to these player decisions of I can do this really simple mechanic, and it's not. It may feel like, oh, we're designing these military people, so we need to build systems that are really, really elegant and really make it so that your decisions are really flowing from every point. It's yes, that's all great, but sometimes that's just not feasible, and sometimes. Sometimes it's not feasible, and sometimes it's not feasible because there's other complexities involved that make it almost impossible to make that work. Sometimes it's not feasible because you only have an hour or two to prep a session. And if you only have a little bit of time to prep a session, this is the kind of thing that you can put together pretty quickly. Like I said, I did this in 5 minutes. I'm a professional game designer, so I wouldn't say 5 minutes is the right bar. But once you sort of start to develop this intuition about what's going to create interesting decisions and what isn't, which is something that you kind of learn over time, as long as you're rigid about the practice of it, then you can put this together in 5 minutes. And really, even without that, I would say 15 or 20 minutes is all you really need, because you make a mechanic that seems about right, and then you go through the checklist. Does it create interesting decisions? What is it in tension with? And how would players likely interact with it? That's really it. And I mean, I've gone a little bit more in depth with that, hopefully, throughout this and in previous videos, but basically that's it. So the idea here is mostly just think of this video a little bit as a warm-up for me too, but also here's just a really quick, simple thing that you can do. And it's just an example of how, it doesn't have to be that complicated, because little simple things can have pretty good impact. They generally won't have huge impact, but also, you can put these out pretty quick. So, all right, that's it. I'm back. I don't know how frequent this is going to be, but I am back. I'm going to do these again. Bye.